Hey guys, SGT here, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have back on the line Mike Krieger, who runs a little site called LibertyBlitzkrieg.com. Mike, welcome back.
John, great to be back on your show. Thanks, man.
Hey, man, it's great to have you, and there's so much happening that it's hard to know where to start. You've written some articles recently I want to touch on, but first let's talk about this physical silver shortage, which appears to be evident at this point. I don't think there's any hiding it. The U.S. Mint has run out and suspended production of silver eagles. There's word that Apple is even having trouble sourcing physical silver for the production of iMacs. We've got the fact that Cliff High's WebBot project has been predicting that this is the month that silver will vault far higher, and Germany's repatriating gold. Everything seems to be coming together for precious metals to spring far higher. What's your take?
As far as the physical silver shortage, I try not to talk about this all that much or hype it up all that much, just because there's been, as you know, so many kind of false starts on the precious metals in, let's say, the last year and a half, where they've really been in a consolidation. So as far as I'm concerned, I look at gold and silver, and I say to myself, okay, well, the more debt we build up, the more we screw up the economy, the more we have central planning, the higher my price targets ultimately go for these metals. So now it's like a 4,000, 5,000 gold easy to me, and then silver in the hundreds, no problem. But I try not to jump on the whole bandwagon with like a lot of the gold bugs hype, because it usually is wrong, or at least in the past 18 months it's wrong. And I've seen so many times over and over, this is it, this is the mania, this is it, this shortages, and it's always wrong. So I'm taking a cautious approach as far as saying it's going to happen now. Although I do think the breakout will happen in this year, probably in the first half as well. The one thing that worries me and bothers me is with this Apple stuff. It's like, I don't think that's I can't. First of all, I haven't seen any source for that rumor or chatter.
Yeah, Mike, I think that Apple silver shortage story actually started over at Silver Doctors. One of their readers actually submitted that info, but you're right, it is a rumor. We see Goldcore, though, picked up on it on Wednesday morning, so even Goldcore has latched onto that. But even in their words, they're referring to it as a quote-unquote rumor. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. So I think everyone listening should be cautious in the sense that, look, people that have a vested interest in precious metals are like people that have a vested interest in anything. And, I'm one of those people, but at the same time, I think to keep your credibility, you want to try to stay away from those Apple kind of rumors, because, listen, for an Apple computer, the amount of silver that they need to create a computer, right, or to put in a computer, look, they'll bid the price up and they'll get the silver. It's a small enough cost in their production line. I would assume it's just worse, bad demand for their products, that they're halting production. I mean, that's just my guess. But as far as the coins, now that is something we can talk about. The Mint sold 6 million in the first couple weeks in January. That's extraordinarily high, really on the run rate. That's the highest ever. They suspended the production again until, I think, January 28th. Now, that is something that I think bears watching, because that could spark some sort of scramble for physical silver. Now, again, I'm hesitant to say this is it, because if you look at Canadian maple leafs, for example, those are available. Now, the premiums are wider, but every time I've checked, I've seen plenty of Canadian maples available, which, it's an ounce of silver. So if there was a real scramble for silver, you should see the premiums on those go through the roof, and then those ultimately disappear. And I haven't seen that. So what I'm saying to people is, watch those kind of things. That's when you'll know it's really on. But we could be close. I'm not saying we're not. I'm just saying, it doesn't help anybody to hype up things that we can't confirm.
Yeah, it's a level-headed approach, but let's follow up just a little bit and think this through as it relates to Germany wanting to repatriate its gold from the Bank of France, and at least part of its gold from the New York Fed. Of course, they can't ask for all their gold back, because that would cause an absolute panic. With central banks really not trusting each other at this point, don't you think the writing is on the wall? I mean, the fact that the central banks are really starting to show their true colors in the fact that they can't trust each other and they want their gold back, I think it's a real turning point, isn't it, Mike? Because central banks need to continue to trust each other to collude in order to suppress the price via the paper market. That's my take. What's yours?
Well, okay, I completely agree that central banks and governments don't trust each other as far as gold. See, but I don't think that's new. I think that's been there for years. it's more geopolitics at this point. So in other words, I think people, and this is a mistake that I made years ago, and that's why the whole thing hasn't blown, right? A lot of us that believe in gold and silver are like, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long? And I think the main reason is this: geopolitics. And what people have, including myself at one point, failed to appreciate was the fact that central banks in the West, right, are not competing against each other at this point. Right? Still not. They are in it for themselves against us. Okay? So this is what I kind of try to explain to people. The oligarchy in China is buying property in the United States, right? If we were against them, well, why would they be doing that? Okay? No, the oligarchy here is in bed with the oligarchy there. The central banks here are in bed with the central banks there. For now. Now, I don't think we've hit the tipping point yet where a central bank decides to say, to hell with it all. I'm going to pull my gold no matter what the consequences because it's going down, and I'm worried about my country and my power more than I'm worried about keeping this little central bank oligarchy cabal, right, of the central banks versus the global populace. That's what I think we have not hit yet. And to me, Germany taking the gold in, I think, what is it, over 7 years from the Fed?
Right. That's
proof of it, right? Like a million people have said, if the gold is there, right, and they want it, they could get it in a couple weeks or a couple months, and they're not. So, I tweeted it jokingly. I said, well, it looks like the Fed told Germany to piss off, and Germany now is going to buy their gold in the open market over 7 years. So that's my, I think perception-wise it's important. I think it's just going to build up, again, I think it's going to build up to the explosion event. But I don't think that's the explosion event because look at the price.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. I think that this has been going on for years and years. You make a great point, but for those paying attention, the cracks in the dam have turned into huge gushing holes. Germany repatriating gold being one of those things, but even Bill O'Reilly on Fox has been warning his audience that an absolute economic disaster and a collapse is headed to the United States and probably very soon. Have you seen that, Mike, and what do you make of that?
Yeah, I haven't, Sean, but I did hear of it, and I think it's important because it's all bubbling up. I like to describe, you mentioned Cliff High earlier, so like he likes to use some language about building tension periods, and again, I think we're in this building tension period, and statements like that from a mainstream sort of conservative guy or neocon, whatever you want to call him, I don't like him either, but it's showing, as you said, cracks in the dam. Exactly. It's showing that people, you can't hide this thing anymore, even from people that want it hidden or are part of the establishment are starting to say, this is ridiculous. It's going to blow, okay, because it's becoming so obvious. And I think there's a few, important things that have happened already in the past few weeks here that show more and more of this sort of awakening, or the 100th monkey, I think, has been passed at this point, where enough of the global population is now awake that it's unstoppable. As far as this sort of a new system coming into place. And those events are, no matter what you think of them, Alex Jones being on Piers Morgan was a huge event because it showed that the mainstream media is essentially handing off to the alternative media. Because Piers put Alex Jones, maybe to embarrass him and the gun people, but also they needed ratings. And guess who gets the ratings? The alternative media gets the ratings. That's where all the growth is. So I think that's one important event. I think the second is, again, I'm not saying that this was staged, but the fact that the Sandy Hook conspiracy video about how, the story, the mainstream story doesn't make sense, that had 11 million views in a month for a YouTube video.
Yeah, less than 2 weeks, actually.
What does that tell you?
Yeah, it had 10 million views in less than 2 weeks. It's
exactly.
Extraordinary.
So,
yeah.
Right. So like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, how many hits would that video have? 1,000, 2,000? 11 million. Okay, so that tells you people are ready to hear alternative explanations. They don't trust anything anymore. And then the last one is this post that I put up recently. I don't know if you caught it, but about the Queen of England basically having veto power over British laws, and that basically Parliament goes and checks with the royal family before they do anything. So it's right. So it's just like people are starting to become aware, like, whoa, an awareness that we went through years ago. That damn, this is a matrix, and it's everything we're taught is fake.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I love that you touched on that article that you wrote. Your article was called "How Much Power Does the Queen of England Have?" Answer: a lot. And let's talk about that a little bit before we move on, because I agree with you. I think that we are reaching a tipping point. I've talked about this before. It's like when we reached a tipping point with bovine growth hormone in the milk. Enough people rejected it, didn't want it, and they stopped using it. It's no longer in the milk. And and that was a great hit against Monsanto. Let's take it to them again with GMOs. But circling back to what George Bush Sr. called more than 200 times while he was president, the New World Order. What aspect of the New World Order do you think the Queen of England plays in the NWO? Like, how much power does she have? A lot of people tell me, it's the Vatican that controls everything. Others will say it's the Rothschilds. What's your take on the Queen of England? Clearly, she does wield a lot of power.
Great question. I think a lot of people, or in general, it's human nature, I think, and this goes for everybody, I try to avoid it, but it happens to me too sometimes, is to try to say, this is it, like, okay, so it's this group, or it's that group, or this is the root of all evil, or that's the root of all evil, or oversimplifying things. When as far as my research, what my research has shown me is that there is, a very small group of people in the shadows, I think, in a lot of cases, and I would say the Queen is in the shadows too, because they pretend to not have power, but they wield a lot of it in the shadows. Banking families, which you mentioned, and then the Vatican, of course, that would be, or lots of organized religious institutions globally potentially. But any organization that has a lot of wealth and influence is running the world, most likely. And I'd be more careful when they try to pretend that they're not. So the Vatican and the Queen and the Rothschilds, they're all, the whole meme behind all of those power structures are, we're here, it's more of like a figurehead, but we don't have any power. So whenever you hear that, they're probably most powerful. So I think all those groups, banking, religion, and then monarchy or political power, that kind of checks all the boxes, doesn't it? So I think they all work together. The Queen uses the bankers use religion uses, political power, the military, and so it's all intertwined. And so that's why I think that, we as a species, if we're going to evolve and move forward and create a better world, need to avoid at all costs centralization, or hero worship. Don't worship political heroes. Don't expect one. Don't worship religious heroes. If you're a religious person, you believe in God and spirituality, that's awesome. But don't put your faith in a man. Don't put your faith in a person.
Yeah, Mike, I totally agree with you, and I think that, when Alex Jones and others refer to this world power structure as, quote-unquote, the globalists, I don't think that's a bad way to do it, because it encompasses all of these different power structures. And I do think that these power structures work behind the scenes together. We see that at Bilderberg. We see other evidence of that, and it is a corporatocracy, a worldwide global corporatocracy. And it's very scary, because it's the corporations, many of which are owned by these few very, very wealthy families, against the people. And I think that's what makes it so overwhelming for those of us in the fight for liberty, because so many forces are aligned against the people, the media, the corporations, and the bought and paid for politicians, that at the end of the day, that's what makes it so difficult for those of us who are out there trying to represent liberty, trying to represent the Constitution, trying to fight for what's right, make any headway.
Yeah, look, it can get, I think all of us in this struggle, all of us in this fight that are doing this for no other reason than the fact that, we care, and we see kind of how bad things are, and we're blessed, me and you, we're blessed to live in this country where there is still some freedom of speech to do what we're doing right now, and we're exercising it to try to make sure we don't lose it.
Well, thanks for watching part 1. Don't miss part 2. Click here.